You've probably seen the headlines. Meta's Reality Labs, the division of the company responsible for the Quest 3 and the Quest 3S, the entire Quest store, multiple VR studios behind huge games, and the unpopular but heavily invested in Horizon Worlds, is seeing massive cuts. Meta is shutting down Horizon workrooms, closing VR studios, and massively scaling back their VR efforts to focus on AI and AR glasses. While on the surface, this news might look like Meta's first step towards ditching VR entirely, I don't think Meta has given up on VR. While this downsizing might seem bleak, I actually think it's not just good for Meta, but it might just be what ends up saving the Quest and its associated platforms as we know them. But first, we need to understand how we got here in the first place. Facebook acquired Oculus back in March of 2014, which at the time was a small but promising company working on developing its prototype VR headset. About 2 years later, they shipped the first consumer version of the original Oculus Rift. Over the next couple of years, they would continue to refine and expand their VR offerings, shipping the Rift S, which improved on the Rift in a lot of key ways, and the original Quest, which was one of the first mass-market standalone VR headsets that brought VR into more hands than ever. Oculus would then a little more than a year later release the Quest 2, massively improving on the overall Quest experience. This headset would go on to sell incredibly well throughout the years. They were, in a lot of respects, on top of the world. They were creating incredible hardware that brought VR into the hands of more people than ever before. They were also pushing technologies like hand tracking further than they had ever gone and brought VR to the biggest audience it ever had. Then, Facebook decided to take a big swing. Facebook rebranded to Meta, and took the Oculus name with it. Mark Zuckerberg pitched his version of the Metaverse, which he named Horizon Worlds. This is where people would play, work, explore, chat, and live their lives, Ready Player One style. There was one big problem though. It sucked. Horizon Worlds didn't do anything new, but instead did stuff other platforms did, but worse. The game largely acted like a watered-down version of Rec Room, a game that had been out since 2016. Same character style, just uglier. Same kinds of experiences, but empty and without the stellar first-party content. Horizon Worlds didn't innovate at all when it came to social VR experiences, and it showed in the player count. Because who's gonna move to a worse, even more corporate version of something we already have? The other big problem this posed is that it actively harmed VR's public perception. People saw this complete failure of a product and assumed that this is all that VR had to offer. That VR was just this portal to this awkward, ugly mess that promised a new world, but couldn't come even close to delivering on that. Meta persisted even with the backlash, and continued to pour billions upon billions of dollars into Horizon Worlds, and integrated it deeper and deeper into their operating system. You couldn't escape it. When you open your headset, there's your Horizon feed. You go to the store and you see normal games alongside Horizon Worlds. The game was added to your library and you couldn't remove it. As soon as you booted up your headset, you were forced to use your Horizon Worlds avatar, and you were presented in front of Horizon Central. Meta would get people to use this platform at any cost necessary, but they began feeling the pressure from investors who were unhappy with how little Horizon Worlds was returning for how much it cost to produce, and users were frustrated with having Horizon Worlds shoved in front of them whether they liked it or not. At the same time, the hype surrounding AI, which we don't support on this channel, but that's for another video, and mixed reality smart glasses was at an all-time high. This finally culminated in Meta deciding to make some big changes. At the end of 2025, Meta announced an up to 30% cut of the Reality Labs budget, and shortly after would announce that they were laying off about 10% of those employees, shutting down multiple VR studios, making some of the newest and most exciting VR releases, shutting down Horizon Workrooms, the work aspect of Horizon Worlds, and most importantly, that Horizon Worlds itself was going mobile first, prioritizing mobile users over their Quest player base, and that the platform would begin to separate it from the operating system. Now that might sound really bad, and some of it is. Losing these talented VR studios hurts VR as a whole, not just Meta, because VR's biggest problem right now is content. But I think the larger message of this is that Meta is finally focusing on why people use their products, why people love VR so much, and it's already showing. Recently, Meta has been making substantial improvements to the overall Quest user experience. The UI got a much needed overhaul, and they've added some awesome new features, like being able to use any flat surface as a keyboard. Meta is really honing in on the quality of life features that make the day-to-day experience of using these headsets that much better. Meta also isn't done with hardware, which to their credit they are, usually, very good with. Plans for a Quest 4 and other future headsets are still very much in the works. This continual development of the Quest hardware is especially important as Meta starts to see more significant competition. While nobody has quite been able to compete well in the entry-level VR space, especially in North America, competition like the Steam Frame puts pressure on Meta to make the best possible product before the competition does, especially towards the mid to high-end VR market, where I predict the Steam Frame will compete. Competition in any industry is always good for consumers, and with Meta shifting their priorities over to the software and hardware experience of these devices, I'm excited to see what they're able to come up with. This isn't Meta giving up on VR, but instead reviving the approach that made Oculus so successful. They're not investing all their resources into stuff that people don't actually care about. They're adding quality of life features that we should have had ages ago. I will always try to give criticism where it's due, and Meta has made a lot of bad choices over the years. And while there are downsides to this shift in focus, I think it's a net positive for Meta, Reality Labs, and the Quest platform as a whole. Oculus expanded VR to heights it arguably couldn't have reached otherwise all those years ago. But after rebranding to Meta, and especially recently, they've really lost a lot of what made them so special. People are now searching for Quest alternatives like the Steam Frame, even if those products sit price-wise above Meta's offerings. I have hopes that this shift in focus can bring a better Quest experience for everyone. Meta's got the hardware in people's hands, they just need to use it better. And I think they might do just that. Hello there. If you're new here, hi, my name is Ferriton. I just wanted to say thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. I started making videos on this channel because I wanted an outlet to talk about things that interested me, and I still can't believe how many people cared enough to stick around, to leave comments and discuss my videos, and most importantly, just watch my videos. I hope to keep making videos for as long as I have interesting things to say, and I can't wait to see where this channel goes. Thank you all for being part of this adventure. That aside, I hope you enjoyed this video. I wanted to make something a little shorter after the giant video I recently released. I always make videos just as long as how much I have to say about a topic, and this video idea fit pretty well for the length I wanted to target. If you like my content, then please consider sticking around, as I have a bunch of videos planned for the near and somewhat distant future. Also, if you're interested in VR and design related content, then you should check out my other videos if you haven't already. Alright, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later.